in trying to come up with an accurate grade.
Итак,
that process would have been a very significant
уважаемые
increase in A grades and B grades, C grades, A levels compared with the past. And even so,
мы
into this
продолжаем
system, which I fully accept for
наше,
all its imperfections and
так сказать, шоу.
injustices, we've ended up with something
Оно
like a
продолжится
2.5%
медитированием. По
increase in A
традиции
grades, a
говорить я
much
буду
bigger
мало или
increase than we
вообще
had for a
не
very
буду
long
говорить, я
time.
буду только
So the
медитировать во
fact is,
время
we've got an increase in A level
таких вот
grades. And the
поездок.
question is, how big an increase in
Поэтому
A-level grades should there have been? But
погнали.
look, there have been
Мне
individual
надо
cases of
вернуться
injustice, and
снова
I
в
completely
Италию.
understand. When you
Я
track
хочу
them,
ее,
it's often
во-первых, всю
something has
исследовать, и,
changed at
во-вторых,
the
открыть
school which has not been allowed for. They've
все.
just gone on the history. Those are exactly the sorts of cases where people should go to appeal and explain
Ну, в
what's
общем, открыть все, что только можно.
The basic principle of a pupil
Ладно,
this year
погнали.
knowing that a contribution to their grade is something they can do nothing about, the history of their school, the prior performance of others. As a principle, does that feel right?
Well, it's imperfect, but there is no fair and right system, because if we had gone down the Scottish route to repeat, every teacher might have done their best efforts, but the fact is that across a whole range of schools, their best efforts would have differed in exactly what they thought of their students' future performance. You need somehow to allow for this. And the individuals should be able to appeal to the schools. And remember the other point, which is, of course, universities understand how imperfect the current system is in their circumstances of the virus. So quite rightly, they are being flexible. And if there are students and their parents listening to this program, another thing that they should think of is, okay, I ended up with slightly lower grades than I was hoping, but I can still go back to that university and say to them, nevertheless, will you let me in? And it can't be guaranteed, but there are good prospects across many of our universities that they will be flexible in those circumstances.
What about what they've done in Wales, where they've given a guarantee that, look, no student will have a result, a grade, less than what they actually achieved at AS level. And if it is, you can lock in your AS level and transfer it to your A-level grade. And AS is a key predictor, I'm told, for A-level.
You're absolutely right. And look, and I think, and Gavin Williamson even said something about this rather ruefully. The fact is that England has got rid of AS exam and school capacity in the crucial months when all the exams were being set. If only England had AS grades from a year back, that would make it possible to do what Wales has done. But we are in the very difficult circumstances. There's been no results of any sort since GCSEs. That is part of the English problem, which they don't have in Wales.
What your party is battling against is those critics who will say it's the same old Tory party who ultimately don't get it for the working classes and are for the elite, because according to detailed analysis published by the regulator Ofqual, the pattern in England has been that where pupils and schools in disadvantaged areas, David, were marked down the most harshly by this model used to predict exams, and pupils also from disadvantaged backgrounds have been hit worst by the standardisation process in the A star A-level grades. Private schools increase the proportion of students getting those grades twice as much as pupils at comprehensives.
It does look as if there's a specific issue around schools with very small A-level classes being favoured relative to the rest. That is a genuine issue in the algorithm, which has only just been published. But more widely, what we've actually seen this year, and I passionately believe in this, is more people getting a place at university, and especially more young people from disadvantaged backgrounds getting a place. That has gone up. and it needs to carry on going up. And one of the lessons from this year's whole unhappy story is that parents and students are desperate and hungry to get to university. We've got to keep on making more room for them.
That's David Willits speaking to me earlier tonight. Listen, so many of you have called me tonight, and so many of our younger listeners have called me tonight. So thank you for doing so. There's a big area of work to do around this grading system, and we'll continue doing it tomorrow night when we join each other at 10:30. Have a nice Saturday in between, and thanks very much for your company. Night.
Digital, BBC Sounds, Smart Speak.
5 Live.
BBC News at 1 o'clock. This is Adam Corso. British travellers have until 4 o'clock this morning to return to the UK from France and a number of other countries if they want to avoid new quarantine measures. A 14-day isolation also applies to the Netherlands, Monaco, Malta, Aruba and the Turks and Caicos Islands. Kim Wells has cut short his trip to France and struggled to find a way to get back in time.
Just lucky I've been to France every summer since I was a kid, so I knew about the sort of slightly less fashionable, well-known New Haven to Yett route still running, and there's only like 3 or 4 ferries a day. So we went for that one and we got lucky. I think we're literally the last chopper out of Saigon because we hit England at 4 o'clock.
The government has said it will reimburse schools for the cost of appeals for A-level and GCSE results after almost 2 in 5 A-level grades were downgraded. There had been fears that the costs, which can reach £150, could deter schools from taking on harder-to-prove cases. Lord Lucas, who's a Conservative peer and editor of the Good Schools Guide, defended the moderation of grades, but said ministers should have foreseen the problems.
What we absolutely should have done and didn't do was realise that this would produce all sorts of difficulties and anomalies for individual students, and that we had to put a really robust and early appeals system in place so that we had a chance of avoiding the extraordinary pain.
The former US President Barack Obama has sharply criticised Donald Trump's refusal to provide additional financial support to the US Postal Service to deal with mail ballots for the November elections. Mr. Obama said the Republican Party had a history of trying to discourage people from voting. Parents are being urged to check that their children haven't missed vaccinations because of the lockdown. The local government association, which represents councils in England and Wales, is calling for a national effort to protect young people and relieve pressure on the NHS. Our health correspondent Lauren Moss reports.
The local government association is concerned that many children will have missed out on routine vaccinations for measles, mumps and rubella, meningitis and the human papillomavirus in the pandemic, as they weren't able to go to schools or clinics during lockdown. Research by Public Health England found that immunisations fell by 20% between the last week of March to mid-April. The LGA is concerned that if young people are not vaccinated, it could lead to pressure on the health service later. It's calling on the government to set out a plan and give local authorities any necessary funding to cope with demand.
Dolly Parton has made clear her support for the Black Lives Matter movement in a rare political statement. In an interview with Billboard magazine, she said she thought although she hadn't attended any marches, she understood that people had to make themselves known, felt and seen. BBC News, it's 3 minutes past 1.
Across BBC Local Radio and BBC Radio 5 Live, Duncan Barks.
Hello, it's Duncan in for Jim. BBC Radio 5 Live, Radio Scotland, Radio Wales, Radio Ulster and BBC Local Radio. Good to have you along as we head through the night, and there's always a ton of stuff to talk about. You need a number. It's a number that you may be familiar with, you might not be familiar with, so make a note of this: 0800 731 2000, 0800 731 2000, the number. We got George and Mel answering your calls this morning. If texting is your thing, then you can drop me a text, 81333, the text number. Got to start your message with the letters UK, otherwise it doesn't get here. UK. Start your message with those letters, 81333 for your message, and you can stick something in my inbox. It is duncan@bbc.co.uk. I'm minded to ask you this as we head through the night. If you are affected by the quarantine kicking in at 4 a.m. this morning, maybe you're trying to head back from France. Maybe you just got off a boat. Maybe you just got off a plane. Do give me a call. 0800 731 2000. I want to talk about that in more detail, but if you are affected by it because you're trying to flee France before the 14-day quarantine kicks in at 4 a.m. this morning, I'd love to get you on the radio. Ton of other stuff to talk about as well. This idea of quarantining people. 77% of Brits approve of the decision to make travellers returning back from the UK from France and the Netherlands, and also Malta as well. That's on the list. It's just been added inside the last couple of days for 14 days. It does appear that there is a sizable chunk of support in this country for this idea. They're saying to people, right, well, you need to quarantine. Do you support this? That's what I'd like to explore with you this morning. Is this something that you think is the right approach? Is this the answer for trying to reduce a likelihood of COVID-19 spreading in this country? Is this the answer? 0800 731 2000 is the number you need. If you are affected by this in any way, I'd love to talk with you this morning. If you're heading back from a port or an airport, let's get you on the radio. And is this a solution? Do you have sympathy with people, particularly France? France has very much been in the spotlight over the last 24 hours. Some people who I've heard interviewed on the radio, on the TV, saying, well, hang on a second, I mean, this doesn't give us much chance to plan ahead. You know, sympathy with people who, with all good intents, thought, yeah, I'll go to France, I'll go on my holidays, it'll be all right, but now they're having to make a mad dash back. Do you have sympathy for people who find themselves in a situation like this? Keen to look at that with you this morning. I also would like to talk about a couple of other places that are opening up across the weekend. You will know that the government slowly but surely has for the first when I was trying to get a snog off someone I was at school with. I mean, that's what we used to do. We used to go to the bowling alley, and I'm just wondering who goes bowling. I just thought I'd lob it into this show over the next few hours. And also casinos. Who goes to casinos? I've not been to a casino for years. The last casino I went to properly was in Liverpool. And I won a few quid. And it was a decision that was driven by a few glasses. And shuffled along, went to the casino, won a few quid and thought, oh, this is all rather jolly. And that's the last time I went to a casino. So I thought I'd just lob it into the mix this morning. As we know that bowling alleys and casinos can reopen for the first time in many months from this weekend. When did you last go to the bowling alley or the casino? Let's talk about that. Did you make a few quid? Does anyone still regularly go to bowling alleys? So interested in this concept. 0800 731 2000. Are you going to be embracing the opportunity to go to your local bowling alley inside the next couple of days, or indeed your local casino? So that is going on. We'll talk about the quarantining, whether or not this gets your support, as 77% of Brits approve of the decision to make travellers returning back from France and the Netherlands back to the UK to quarantine for 14 days. Does it get your support? A few other bits and pieces. I'd like to talk about alcohol as well. They're saying that lockdown drinking habits could have lasting impacts. It's a warning being made by the charity Drink Aware, and they've got concerns that throughout lockdown since the middle of March onwards, people have been stuck at home and increasingly are relying on alcohol to maybe make life a little bit more bearable. And this particular charity is warning after a survey suggested around a third of people on furlough and parents with at least one child under 18 are consuming more alcohol since the shutdown began. Their concern is well, that this particular habit, as some people might have got into, could be long-lasting. Their statistics for these two groups That's people on furlough and parents with at least one kid under 18. Alongside young adults are higher than the national average of 22%. So they're saying around 11.7 million people said they were drinking more as a result of furloughing or lockdown. The main reasons for doing so were boredom and people having more time on their hands. The charity warning that drinking more could become a habit that is ingrained and hard to break. 1/3 of parents with at least one child under the age of 18 and 38% of people on furlough said they are drinking more since lockdown began. And some 29% of young adults, people aged 18 to 34, said they were drinking more. And one of the top 3 reasons given as to why was because they were feeling anxious. I'm wondering if you can relate to any of this at all. 0800 731 2000 is our number. You can text 81333, start your message with the letters UK, and email, it's duncan@bbc.co.uk. Are you drinking more alcohol since lockdown? And if you are, let's talk about it this morning. But also, if you're someone who knows a bit about maybe living with drink, possibly excessive drink, how do you reduce your alcohol consumption? Because just reading this report, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? If you're off work, if you're anxious about the future, there is, I'm not encouraging people, but I think it's fair to say there is a temptation to maybe have a few glasses every night, and then you get into the habit of a few glasses and a few more glasses. How do you reduce your alcohol consumption? How do you do it? 0800 731 2000. And something else I want to talk about. I know there's a lot of stuff, but I'm here throughout the night, so we've got plenty of time to talk about various things. Something else I'd like to talk about is something that made me smile. I don't know about you, but increasingly I'm always looking for reasons to smile, and I'm going to warn you, I'm going to mention food, which is always difficult when you do nighttime radio because people go, oh, I'm really hungry then. I'm going to go to the fridge. We're going to talk about chips. Well, at least I hope we're going to talk about chips. Some research has been released. Now, this is England, but of course, I want you to tell me what it's like in Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. It's about chip toppings across England, and it made me smile because I came across something I know nothing about. I'll get to that in a second. They went out and asked various people across England about what they most prefer to have alongside their chips, their chip toppings, if you like. And they've broken it down per area or county regarding the favourites. Quite interesting. Ketchup is most popular in Oxfordshire, with 45% of people say, oh, yeah, the old Tommy K on the chips. Curry sauce, most popular in Worcestershire, 44%. Mushy peas in South Yorkshire at 46%. 46% of people in South Yorkshire going, just give me the mushy peas. Gravy is top of the list in Manchester. Mayonnaise, which I've never understood in Dorset. Why would you have mayonnaise with chips? What's that about? 25% of people in Dorset just saying it's got to be mayo. And here's the one that made me raise a quizzical eyebrow. Chip spice. East Riding. 36% of people in East Riding going, no shadow of a doubt. Alongside me chips, I want me chip spice. Now, I don't know what chip spice is. So maybe you can educate me this morning. 0800 731 2000. Mel and George are answering your calls. Do you know what chip spice is? Blank faces all round. 81333 on the text. Start your message with the letters UK. A little bit of light relief as we head through the night. What is the best chip topping? And why? And I'll take anything chip related. If you don't want to talk about the COVID stuff, and I can understand why, if you ever worked in a chip, you give me a call. Where are the best chips in the United Kingdom? I had some magnificent chips in Inverness once. Can't remember the name of the chip shop, but they were damn good chips. And here's the thing. I have a theory that fish and chips always taste better if they're eaten by the seaside. You reckon that stands up to scrutiny? All of that happening tonight. 0800 731 2000. Let's talk. My name's Duncan. I'm in for Jim. It's BBC Radio 5 Live, Radio Scotland, Radio Wales, Radio Ulster, and of course, BBC Local Radio. Let's talk to Sandra. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, you've got a story to tell. It sounds like you've had an interesting 24 hours.
We have. Yes, we've been to France, and it's been a real flying visit because we've gone to pack up our house because we've sold it in Brittany.
Right. So when did you go over?
Tuesday.
Yeah, and you went over thinking, this is going to be a relatively easy job. Did you have any concerns about France going on the list for quarantine?
No, we've been listening to the news for a few days before, so we actually didn't have our passage booked on the way back because we weren't sure how long it would take to pack. What was suggested in the news, we decided to book our ticket actually before we left, and I'm glad we did because it was absolutely packed, the ferry.
Is it fair to say you took a little bit of a gamble?
Well, yes, because we couldn't afford to quarantine because we're extremely busy at the moment renovating a house, and we've got people due to work on that house in the next week, so we knew we'd got to get back before the quarantine, which we managed to do on the last ferry before the lockdown.
Right, so just walk us through, and thank you for picking up the phone, Sandra, because this is what's going on for a lot of people trying to get out of France at the moment. At what point did you make the decision to leave?
Well, we booked before we left, actually,
right.
but we've only been in France for 2 days.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. So you'd already booked your return ferry crossing?
We did, because we suspected that there would be lockdown.
I see. So with a
quarantine.
Bit of a precaution, you thought, well, we'll book it, and if we need to get out of here, we can.
Yeah.
What's it been like travelling back then? So what time did you board the ferry?
To be honest, we set off really early because we thought there might be queues, but we didn't see any queues at all, and we sat around a lot of the day, to be honest. But the ferry, we boarded the ferry about 3:30 this afternoon.
Okay, and you were sailing, sorry to interrupt, just so I'm clear, you were sailing from where?
From Roscoff to Plymouth.
Oh, I see, yeah, okay, yeah.
So we got into Plymouth about 9:30. And we're still travelling home at the moment, going back to Malvern.
If you don't mind me using this word, you must be knackered.
It's been a long day because we've literally packed a whole house up in 2 days. So we've had 2 days of really hard graft, to be honest, because we've had the house for 16 years.
Okay.
So our love affair with France has ended, I'm afraid, today.
Oh, so is today a sad day?
Mixed feelings. Mixed feelings.
If I can ask, what was the reason behind packing up and leaving France?
Various things. We're retired. The children have grown up. We're not using the house as much. Obviously the expense of running it when we're not going, and Brexit possibly more difficult in the future. Travelling's going to be more difficult with climate change, and also as well, I suppose you get fed up of going to the same place.
Yeah, and just paint us a picture this morning. The place where you were, your house in France, for the last, I think you said, 16 years.
Yes, yeah.
What kind of house was it?
It's a house in Brittany, a typical Breton stone house, and the beach is at the bottom of the road.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
It's in a beautiful place on the granite rose coast, the pink granite rose coast. Yeah, it's beautiful.
You painted a nice picture, but your trip back into Plymouth then, it sounds like you went to the ferry port with plenty of time to spare, but it has not been as busy as some places have been by the sounds of it.
No, it's been relatively quiet, but I did look on their website, and they did say that the tickets were sold out, so I don't think there was any capacity left on the ferry.
I think there's been a lot of demand, and I mean, you're safely back in the United Kingdom, so you don't need to worry about quarantining, which kicks in.
We are, yes, with six hours to spare.
6 hours to spare. What do you think of the idea of people now who won't make the 4 a.m. deadline, who when they come back from France are going to have to spend 14 days in quarantine? Is that something that you're broadly supportive of, son?
I am supportive of it, and we did say that we took the chance, and if we did have to quarantine, well, we would have to do it.
Yeah.
But we're really glad that we've escaped on time. And we've got the most massive packed van to empty, and I've now got to arrange to have all the furniture removed.
Right, so you're driving a van back. Are you driving the van back to Malvern, or was the van following later?
Driving a van full of all our French work because.
What time? Where are you now then?
Where are we now? I will just ask the driver. Where are we, Dave? We're coming up to Gloucester.
Oh, so you're not too far away from Malvern then?
So we're not too far away.
Yeah, you got the home straight. You're on the home straight.
We're on the home straight.
You're not going to be unpacking that van tonight, are you? You're going to park it up and go to bed, I should imagine.
No, we are. We're going to park it up and go to bed.
All right. Listen, thanks for calling, Sandra, and I hope the remainder of your journey is a safe one. That's Sandra and co. in a car coming back from France, nicely back in the United Kingdom ahead of 4 a.m. If you're affected at all by the quarantine that kicks in just under 3 hours' time, do give me a call. 0800 731 2000. If you're affected in any way, I mean, maybe you're listening at the moment driving back from an airport or a ferry port, I'd love to get you on the radio. And do you support this idea of saying to people, look, you've been in France, or indeed the Netherlands, you need to quarantine for 14 days. According to one bit of research out this morning, 77% of people in Britain quarantine for 14 days. Are you supportive? Do you think this is the answer? 81333 is the text number. Start your message with the words, or rather the letters, UK. And you can email duncan@bbc.co.uk. Let's talk to Sean. Good morning.
Hello, mate. How are you doing?
I'm not too shabby.
You know what it is? You know what it is, Duncan? We will never get rid of this virus. These people that have went abroad, right, they're doing it on their own backs, right? They shouldn't be allowed back into the country. They shouldn't be allowed back into the country till we get rid of this virus. Why should we stop at home for 4 months and still stopping at home?
Well, what's
and yet people have gone abroad.
Yeah.
You don't know if they brought it back because there's no tests or nothing at airports and things like that. This is desperate, like. This is shocking, like.
Let me make sure, mate. Let me make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say that people should not be allowed back in the country?
Shouldn't be allowed back into the country, mate.
How does that?
They knew the virus was still here.
Yeah.
And yet they're still going abroad and saying, "Oh, well, enjoy our holidays." Now they're twisting. They're going to have 14 days quarantine. I'm sorry, the country that they're in, they should stop in till we get rid of the virus.
All right. Do you think that's practical?
Yes, I do.
How?
Yes,
How would it work? How would it work?
Why? But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, mate, they shouldn't. They were told they are risking their lives to go abroad on holiday.
I don't think they were told they're risking their lives. I think it's fair to make the observation that there would have been the possibility that a country they're travelling to could end up on the quarantine list, as has happened with France.
But don't know why are they going abroad? There's plenty of places in this country, you know what I mean? They don't have to go abroad. And now that the quarantine, they're twisting like mad. You know what I mean? We have done the right thing, stopping in our houses for 4 months, and yet they go, oh, I need a holiday. And if they get the virus, they'll bring it back, and we'll be under another spell of it. You know what I mean?
Kind of. I mean, some people listening might be thinking you're a little bit harsh on people who might have weighed up the risk assessment and thought, you know what, that country is relatively safe, I'm going to go.
But it's not safe, is it? Why have they turned around to France now and turned around saying, oh, you're going to be quarantined 14 days? They shouldn't be allowed back in, mate, till we get rid of this virus. Chips, batter. I love me batter on chips.
All right, let's just move on for a second, because if someone's just put the radio on, Sean, they'll be thinking, that's quite a leap from quarantine to chips. One of the things I want to chew over this morning, if you pardon the pun, is the best topping on chips and why, because there's a massive list out regarding various parts of England and the favoured topping. So I'll take anything chip-related. What have you got to say, Sean?
I just love batter.
Batter?
I can't eat chips without batter, mate. You know the batter off the fish?
Yeah.
The scrapings or whatever.
Well, I was once told that's called scraps.
No, it's batter up.
No, it's not. No, I know what you mean. The little fragments of batter off the fish, right? I was told by someone who worked in a chippy that you call that the scraps. And people come in and they go, can I have a portion of chips and can I have scraps with it?
No, batter. It's batter in County Durham, mate.
Is it? I wonder why it changes in different parts of the UK.
I don't know. It's probably poshness, you know, some scrapings.
Where are you in County Durham, Sean?
I'm in Concert, mate.
Right, okay. Last time I was in Durham town, if you like, was to go to the Coal Pits pub. Ever been there?
No.
Lovely boozer. Sean, I'm going to move it on, thank you. This is Liv. Hello, Liv.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. What were they going to talk about?
A bowling alley.
I'm fascinated by this because as of this weekend, for the first time in months, casinos and bowling alleys are allowed to reopen. And I've got to be honest with you, I do wonder who goes to bowling alleys these days.
Well, actually, they're quite popular because, I'm not really into it, but one of my friends she was being really into it. And up until about 2 years ago, nearly every year we were going every few months because, you can go and celebrate your birthday or whatever, and you can go along and have a game with your friends, and you can order chips, burgers and chips, and you can have mocktails and cocktails, and it's just a way of socialising. And also my work, which I forgot to mention when I first rang in, my work last year, we also went bowling twice because the one that I went with my friend, that was in High Street, Ken, I think. And the one that I went with work was in Kingston. So they are popping up all over the place. And
well, I see them. I see the bowling alleys everywhere, but I just wonder the kind of typical clientele because, as I mentioned earlier, I've not been 10-pin bowling since I was a teenager. But, so you go along, or you know people who go along and they like it because you get your burgers and chips and... Did you say cocktails?
You can have a cocktail or you can have a mocktail.
Yeah.
You can. It's just like what you would normally get at a bar. You can have a drink, basically.
Right.
And you can order food or whatever. And it's quite good fun. I mean, you get girly groups going there, but you can also, you get a mixture of people as well because, like I said, I went with my work for like Christmas do and things like that. So I think they're quite popular, and there always seems to be a lot of people, a lot of groups. So I must admit, though, the actual bowl that you have to pick up and throw is quite heavy, and I've sort of I'm not great at it, but it is a lot of fun.
They are quite chunky, those bowls, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. It's really heavy, and my arm was aching next day.
Yeah. And you got to wear those funny shoes. That's what I remember when I was a teenager going bowling on a date with someone in my class who I quite liked. You had to change your shoes. Does that still go on?
No, I mean most people wear trainers when they go there.
Right.
And you don't have to wear. They don't give you any shoes or anything.
But I thought that there used to be a thing, didn't it? Or have I imagined it?
I don't know. I mean, I must admit, I never went when I was young. When I was a teenager, or even in my 20s. This was when I was older. So
right.
I've only known it for the past. Probably in the past sort of 5 years, I think I would say.
I've got a clear recollection of going to a bowling alley and you have to hand over your shoes and they ask you for your size and you go, size 10. And then they hand you back these things that other people have worn. And they're like soft leather. I'm sure that's what used to happen. Convinced of it. Liv, good talking to you. That's Liv in Wimbledon, Greater London. 0800 731 2000 the number. My name's Duncan in for Jim. Through the night here on BBC Radio 5 Live, Radio Scotland, Radio Wales, Radio Ulster and BBC Local Radio. Quick look at the forecast across the United Kingdom tonight. Scattered thunderstorms continuing across some southern parts of England and Wales. Elsewhere, largely dry. A lot of low cloud and patchy mist. And depending where you are in the United Kingdom, temperatures falling to lows of 11 to 19 Celsius. Tends to be warmer in the southern part of the UK at the moment. 0800 731 2000, our number. As we talk about quarantine, 77% of Brits approving of the decision to make travellers returning back to the UK from France and the Netherlands quarantine for 14 days. Do you agree? Is this a useful tactic to reduce the likelihood of COVID-19 in the United Kingdom? If you're listening to the radio at the moment, and maybe you're waiting to pick someone up from the airport who's trying to get out of France or indeed the Netherlands or elsewhere, or maybe you're driving back from a seaport because you just managed to get off a ferry from France or whatever, I'd love to talk to you this morning. And also, if you're affected by this in any way, give me a call, because you will see people on the TV news later on today, Saturday, being interviewed about their mad dash back from France. And do you have sympathy for people who find themselves in this particular situation? Sean in County Durham earlier was very clear. He just said no, you shouldn't allow them back in the country. Though quite how you enforce that, I don't know. This weekend sees casinos and bowling alleys reopening for the first time in many months. You heard my chat there with Liv about bowling alleys. Who goes bowling? But I can ask. I mean, so far we've established it's a social thing that maybe you do, as Liv said, as a girly night out. Maybe a social event with your workplace, I don't know. And casinos. When did you last go to the casino? And did you win anything? More serious chat about alcohol. Charity called Drink Aware, saying that people have increased their drinking habits throughout lockdown. And this may well have a lasting impact because it's a habit that's hard to shift. So I'm asking you, are you drinking more alcohol since lockdown? And how do you reduce your alcohol consumption? Not necessarily an easy conversation to have, but if you're someone who's listening to the radio at the moment who maybe has dealt with your addiction to alcohol, you may well have some insight as to what people should consider regarding maybe knocking it on the head or reducing their consumption. 0800 731 2000 the number, and some light relief at the moment as we talk anything chips related. Bit of research here. It's England, but we'll broaden it out across Wales and Northern Ireland and Scotland as well, about the best thing to have with your chips. I'm still none the wiser regarding chip spice, where apparently they asked people in East Riding, they said, what's the best thing to have your chips in terms of like sauces or toppings, and 36% of people said chip spice. I don't even know what that is. So we're looking at that. But on the list, Oxfordshire, they love their ketchup. Worcestershire, curry sauce, gravy in Manchester. 38% of people said, yeah, can't have chips without gravy. If you ever worked in a chippy, let me know. And help me with my theory, which is fish and chips always taste better if eaten by the seaside. The email address is Duncan, D-U-N-C-A-N, duncan@bbc.co.uk. On the text is 81333, start your message with the letters UK. 0800 731 2000 the number. I'll do some of your messages shortly, but let's go to Brighton and Mike. Hello, Mike.
All right, Duncan. Good evening.
Evening, sir. What would you like to say?
Yeah, just to say, it's like, basically, the amount of booze most people consume during the lockdown is like horrendous. Obviously, I'm 6'1", and normally I'm about 14 stone, with good fighting weight, but all of a sudden, during the lockdown, I've got a massive big derby, as in belly, Derby Kelly belly. Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, I put my 34 jeans on, I thought, there's no way you're getting into them, son, you know. And I thought, well, the first sort of like pint I had, I thought, it went down quicker than a homesick mole. It flew down, you know. I thought, I've got to do something about this. So, because the sneakers and everything's been on, I thought, well, I'll have a couple just a beer today, and that. But that's definitely it. That's me. I'm probably like 2 pints a day.
All right. So you had a marked increase in your beer consumption during lockdown.
Oh yeah. Listen, it's like all your listeners will all agree. 98% of them will. Have you been drinking more than they used to? Of course they have been.
Well, let's talk about you. What's been your reasoning behind that? Because according to this survey, this is Drink Aware.
Duncan, which survey are you going from, mate?
I'm talking about Drink Aware, the charity, saying that it's going to be hard for some people to kick the habit of increased alcohol consumption during lockdown.
Right, yeah.
But I'm interested in you. So what was the reason behind it, Mike? Was it boredom, as this survey suggests?
98% of it is boredom.
Right.
You're not allowed to go out. You have to wear the face mask, and you don't want to really associate with anybody else. You know, I mean, I'm a single parent, and obviously she lives with my son lives with her mother.
Yeah.
But besides the point, but when football just started again, and you know, so I'm a Man City fan. Excuse me, everybody, but I'm a Man City fan. And that is it. I'm from Manchester and I live in Brighton. I've been living there for years. So that's the whole point. So you guaranteed every single one of your listeners has been listening and thinking, I've had like sneaky little bottles. And what you get where I live, you get the people at night time, like all you hear is clunk, 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 clunk in the bins.
Yeah.
All the bottles of wine, everything. And it's like, I think it's so jakes, but everybody's having a drink.
Understood. So you ended up having more beer by the sounds of it. You developed a beer gut, but are you now trying to lose that beer gut?
Well, so I'm down like 800 calories a day, and I'm doing sit-ups at the moment. So that's to lose the weight, you know, which is terrible. And I'm starving, but I thought, I've got to lose this beer gut because it doesn't. I've got so many shirts and so many clothes what I can't fit into. So that gives me an incentive just to get rid of my big beer gut.
Understood. Listen, Mike, gonna move it on. Thank you. Good luck with the dieting. This is Neil in North Yorkshire. Hello, Neil.
Hello, Duncan. How are you?
Not too shabby. Chips?
Yes. For me, it's got to be scraps, mushy peas and ketchup.
Now, scraps, I was always led to believe those are those little bits of batter, and I said to the earlier caller, Sean, I said they're called scraps, aren't they? He said, no, they're called batter here in County Durham, but they are known as scraps, yeah.
It's scraps.
Yeah.
And I did a bit of research for you, looking about chip spice.
Yeah, chip spice. What is it? Do you know?
It's an American thing. Just hang on, I can tell you what it is. I've got it.
I like a bit of research. Have you fired up your laptop or something? What have you done? Hello? Go on.
It's an American style seasoning.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
What's in it?
Do
we know?
Salt, paprika, tomato powder, monosodium glutamate, onion and garlic.
That sounds pretty gross, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right,
what do you expect with monosodium glutamate?
But this is something from the US, but it doesn't explain why. According to this stuff all about chips that's come out and people's favourite toppings and sauces, why chip spice is riding high, if you pardon the pun, in East Riding in Yorkshire. How does that work?
They're totally separate from the North Riding of Yorkshire. Because effectively the East Riding is effectively the old Humberside.
Right, yeah, that would make sense, but I still can't work out why chip spice would be massive in East Riding, can you?
No, but they're
All right, mate, going to leave it there because the old phone's playing up a bit, but thank you. That's Neil in North Yorkshire. Should we do some of your messages? 81333, the text number, starts your message with the letters UK. Where do we start? This is Keith in Gosport. Duncan, I'm a poor southerner, in brackets, Pompey area. Definitely not posh, and it's scraps down here, mate. Yeah, I always thought it was scraps, those bits of batter with your chips. I know Gosport well. Good to know you're listening, Keith. Who's this? Elizabeth in County Antrim. The topping on chips has to be grated cheese with salt and vinegar. Yeah, but can you get that from the chippy? Because I've never seen grated cheese in the chippy. Dave says, Duncan, some of us in West Cumbria call the bits of batter blimey. Let me see. Let me just lean over towards his screen. Troutlins? Troutlins? No particular spelling, but that's how you pronounce it. Troutlins. I got that right? Dave, let me know. Never heard of it. Katie in Northumberland. You're talking bowling. I would go every weekend with friends, had a great time. Sadly, the building's gone and now a supermarket. Wishing you and the team a blue sky weekend, says Katie. Well, it depends where Yeah, I'm wondering what it's going to be like weather-wise. Thankfully, it's a lot cooler compared to recent nights. It's been horrible, hasn't it? A few more here. Mark in York says, what happens if you are on a night ferry from France or the Netherlands? The ferry will have left in the evening and been in English water by 4 a.m. but won't dock by 6 or 7. Do they have to quarantine? I'm generally asking for a friend who doesn't have signal, as he is on the boat right now. I'm led to believe, and this is only something that I heard on the BBC News earlier, that in order not to quarantine, your boat has to be docked in an English port or a port by 4 a.m. If you're in English waters, territorial waters, that's at 4 a.m. that's not good enough. You need to be docked in a port by 4 a.m. That's as I understand it. A few more here. Who's this? Deborah in West Yorkshire. The bits are called scraps in Leeds. You was right. Also, I agree that all these people abroad are selfish and are spreading the virus. I'm still locked down since March due to conditions, and these people are not helping at all, says Deborah. And one more here from Nigel, who's in the West Midlands. Since lockdown, I've been drinking more. I think many people have, Nigel, and thank you for your message. I'm wondering whether or not there are people listening at the moment who recognise they've been boozing more because of lockdown. The two reasons given by this drink charity, or this charity that has concerns about people's excessive alcohol consumption, Drink Aware, they're saying people have been drinking more, possibly out of boredom, but also anxiety. And their concern is it's a habit that some people might find hard to kick. And if you can relate to that, do give me a call. 0800 731 2000. Let's talk to George. Hello, George.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. What are you thinking this morning?
Well, I was listening to that chap Sean from County Durham.
Yeah.
And I have to strongly disagree with him. I think the idea that we can blanket ban people from travelling abroad or not letting them re-enter the UK is just absolutely absurd. It doesn't make any sense at all. Quarantining for 2 weeks is practical, it's a good idea, but to stop people from travelling in or out is just absolutely ludicrous. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
You're supportive of the 14 days in quarantine.
No one's policing it, are they? I mean, you have to sort of trust that people will quarantine on their own sort of free will, I suppose, which you hope they would. But, I mean, the idea that an economy can function without people entering or leaving the UK is just doesn't make any sense. And I think I understand his anxiety and his anger towards carelessness, but I don't think it's careless for people to holiday abroad and return to the UK. I think at some point we have to pick ourselves up and continue life the way it was before lockdown, because it will destroy us if we're not careful.
It's not just Sean's view. I had a message from Deborah inside the last 10 minutes also saying that the people who go overseas are selfish and they shouldn't really be going on holiday. I think there is, that view is out there. You made it very clear you support the 14 days, but is there any argument to say that if someone decides to disappear off to a country and whilst they're out there, the quarantine kicks in, is there any argument to say that that's not fair?
Well, I think it's not a question of whether it's fair or not. It's a question of safety and circumstance. It's no one's fault that quarantine was instigated whilst they're out there. It's unfortunate, I suppose, and it's not been factored in when they left. But if it happens to be the case whilst they're out there, there's not really a lot they can do about that. It's law, isn't it? It's something we just have to put up with.
Yeah, and there's been some debate, certainly over the last few days, about if people have to quarantine for 14 days, like we're discussing with people coming back from France, whether or not they should get some kind of compensation or sick pay, and whether or not that should be paid by the government or indeed the employer. What would your thoughts be around that?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think they've already spent billions of pounds on furlough pay, so a few more billion to cover the cost of quarantine probably won't make a massive impact, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, I can appreciate a circumstance where an employer is expecting someone to come back from holiday and then they're told they their employee has to quarantine for 2 weeks. It's the law. There's not, again, it's really inconvenient. It's very disruptive. But on the bigger picture, what would be more disruptive is the idea that we can never go abroad again. We've got to wait for the virus to end. Well, I'd agree with Sean from County Durham. The virus is probably never going to end, but it's just to what extent will it disrupt life?
So you seem to be of the view, if I've understood you correctly, that actually we need to crack on as best we can for not only the British economy, but the economy of other countries around the world.
I've got every sympathy for those that have been affected by the virus, and it's tragic, the amount of death that we've seen. But ultimately, we are a society. We need to function. The world needs to keep spinning. And where does it stop? How long are we going to sort of sit inside and wait for it to blow over? It's never going to blow over. It's a case of we have to just pick ourselves up, move on, practice sanitation, social distancing, and keep each other safe. But we can't just do this forever. I mean, 3 days ago they announced that the UK was entering a recession again, and that's literally down to businesses being crumbled by the virus. Well, okay, we're all going to be safe for however long, but if it means that there's no jobs, there's no money, there's no economy, then at what cost is that? We're all alive, but nobody's got any money or any food or anything to function.
And if I can ask about you, are you working at the moment? Have you managed to work throughout lockdown? How's it impacted on you?
I've been really, really lucky. So I work for BMW, so I'm a car salesman.
Right.
So for 12 weeks I was on furlough. I was paid 80% of my salary. Again, incredibly fortunate. The cost of living decreased dramatically during furlough because, like everyone else, I was stuck at home not doing anything. And now we're entering into a phase where we've reopened the dealership. We are selling cars in person, but we've also instigated working from home measures that we hadn't before lockdown, which is proving to be really successful. So from my perspective, yeah, I've been incredibly lucky. I'm back at work, serving customers. I feel sorry for those that work in sort of the pub industry and on the high street as well, because we are seeing an increased number of businesses closing down. It's terrible. I feel really bad. But, I mean, and then I think the Darwinian side of me thinks, well, survival of the fittest. We need to get back up. We need to push on and start living life again, because it's not sustainable, us all quarantining and staying at home and not seeing each other. It just doesn't work in the long term.
Are people buying cars at the moment, then?
Massively. You'll be so surprised.
Yeah, I am surprised. Yeah, go on. Tell us about it.
Well, the truth is, we all assumed that it would be really quiet. Nobody would risk spending that kind of money on cars. But actually, the truth is, there's a demographic of people, a proportion of people that would rather buy a new car than ever use public transport again. There's many people that have been sat there on full pay, working from home, not spending any money, and they've built this, pot of disposable income. And the truth is, they want to spend it. They want to go out and buy cars. We also serve cars to Motability customers. So again, during the lockdown, many Motability customers had come to the end of their 3-year term and they were ready to change cars. We reopened the business, and then we've got this huge pool of customers all ready to order their next Motability car. So it's been really, really busy. It's been fantastic, and it's nice to see that consumer confidence back in our business.
I'm really glad you called up, actually, and thank you for answering my questions about what you do for a living, because my gut would be that nobody would be out and about spending money on a brand spanking new BMW, but you're telling me that is certainly not the case. I mean, one could then say that whilst we have entered recession, potentially we are in a good place to come out of this recession sooner rather than later. People are going out and buying brand new cars.
Yeah, I don't think we're out of the woods yet. I think to suggest there'll be a second wave or a second lockdown, absolutely true. I believe that. The only other thing to say is that I don't think we're out of the woods yet. I think there's a big, big dark storm ahead of us. There's going to be a lot more redundancies, a lot more business closure, sadly, but it's harsh, but it's true. So yes, although it's positive at the moment, it's uncertain what the future will be, but we're just making hay while the sun shines, to be honest, and trying to crack on with it.
Well, listen, mate, I'm glad you picked up the phone, George. Travel safe. That's George in Northampton. Wasn't that interesting? The idea, he works for BMW, he's very clear about that, And he's back now in the car showrooms, and people are coming in and buying brand new cars. Now, given everything that I've read and seen over the last couple of days, particularly the announcement that the UK has gone into recession, I'd be thinking, nah, no one's going out buying new cars, new motors, but it seems that's not the case. They are. Fascinating. 0800 731 2000. I'd like to be part of what's going on here in Tyneside. It's John. Hello, John.
Hello.
Hello. What would you like to say, sir?
Well, it was three subjects. One was the chips.
Yeah.
The other the alcohol, and the other isolation business. The chips part.
Mm-hmm.
When I used to work at Swan Hunter, I used to buy a bag of chips and get a Cadbury's chocolate flake and just put it on the top of the chips and let the chocolate melt down through the chips.
Mate, that's not normal, is it?
I don't know, but it tasted lovely.
Who cares? Who cares? I've never heard of anyone putting chocolate on their chips, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. Cadbury's chocolate flake and just let it melt down.
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, that is why putting something sweet on top of your potatoes. That's quite a challenge.
Well, it's just like that business where people were getting the Mars bar one and getting it coated in butter.
I spent time up in Edinburgh and had my first deep fried Mars bar back in where are we now? 2020. So it would have been probably about 18 years ago. Have you ever had a deep fried Mars bar at all, John?
Yeah, it's just the same sort of daft trick, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, when I bit into
it tastes nice anyway.
It does, but you can feel the arteries clogging up with every mouthful.
Is that why I'm on cholesterol tablets? No.
Yeah, may well be. All right, we've done good work on that. Your thoughts on the quarantine stuff? What are you thinking?
Well, personally, I think people should have realised that could have happened. You know, given the situation we're in.
Yeah.
But I'll just ask the question is, they come out of an airport and they get on public transport to go home. What's the point of putting them in quarantine if they've been on a train with another 200 people?
Yeah, I hear the point you're making. I mean, presumably they would be wearing a mask and social distancing, so potentially it reduces the risk of spreading the virus.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, and you wanted to say something about alcohol consumption during the lockdown. Have you increased your drinking at all?
Well, before the lockdown, I never ever drank in the house. I'd go out every night for a drink.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. And I had to go and see a consultant before Christmas, and he said, you've got to cut down on your drinking.
Right.
But don't stop. So when the lockdown came, instead of going out for a drink, where I would have drank 4 pints of beer, probably.
Right.
I drank 2 cans of beer.
Yeah.
And I hated it. I absolutely hated drinking them 2 cans of beer.
Why?
Because I was sitting there, nobody to talk to.
Right. So your drinking is a social thing. You go to your local boozer, have your 4 pints, and have a chat with anyone in the pub. Yeah.
That's right. Yes. Very much so.
And now you've been doing it at home with a couple of cans and not getting that social interaction. So, I mean, I'm just trying to think. 4 pints down to 2 cans, though, that is a reduction, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was taking as long as there was 2 cans as it was for me to drink them 4 pints.
Okay.
Just didn't enjoy them at all.
No, I can understand why. And since the pubs have reopened, have you been back to your local pub at all?
Oh, yes.
Yeah?
From day one, now I missed.
Every night?
Every night.
And what's it like in there? Because my local, I mean, it's open, but it's got the social distancing, you've got tables well spaced out, you've got to give your details and stuff. What's your one like?
Well, where I go to the club, it's a social club.
Yeah.
And it was slow the first week, it's picked up the second week, it's picked up a bit better, and it's picking up, and it's slowly picking up. And it has all the social distancing business in, you know, we took some of the chairs away and put them out of the way so people cannot be as close as what they used to be.
Yeah.
But it was very slowly picking up.
Slowly but surely by the sounds of it, yeah?
Because the club, the committee has control and they look after everybody, anybody that's working that ticket. out.
Makes a lot of sense. And I mean, if you've got a club, a social club, or a club where you've got to be a member, of course, you know exactly who those people are as well. Listen, John, great call. Thank you, mate. Going to move it on. Audrey, good morning. Hello. Audrey, you there?
Hello, yes, good morning.
You're on the radio. Good morning. What would you like to say?
On about vinegar on your chips.
Oh, yeah.
Are you still there?
I'm listening.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, go on.
I like my pickled vinegar from the onions. It's got to be pickled onions vinegar.
No, this is the most extraordinary thing I've heard. So the vinegar.
No, it's got that lovely flavour, and they've got to be. And you've got to be matured about, probably only in your home for about 6 months.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. So you drain the vinegar from your pickled onions?
No, I just get a spoonful. No, I just tip it out from the jar.
Yes,
no.
But you're tipping it out from the jar that's got pickled onions in?
Yeah. And they've got to be homemade, not bought, no.
Well, why? What's the matter with the stuff in the shops?
Well, they're white and they're not brown, and they haven't got that flavour, and they haven't got that sort of spice. What you put in you put your own spice in, you know, and it's got that lovely flavour to it.
I've seen brown pickled onions in the supermarkets.
Yeah, but they haven't got that flavour though. No, they haven't got that same flavour. No.
Right. So when did you discover you wanted the vinegar from your pickled onions on your chips?
Oh, a long time, because I'm nearly 92.
Oh, okay. So how long have you been doing it for?
Oh, I've been doing it years. My husband used to do it, you know.
Yeah.
And we've been dead 9 years, but we were married 67 years. So I mean, that's it, you know. Yeah, well, not 67. So sorry, but yeah.
The area of pickled onions is quite a vexed.
Well, they're shallots, really. You know, they're onions, but they're shallots, really. Yeah, the onions, well, the proper one, what you pickle is shallots, really. Yeah.
Do you make your own, or have you done in the past? You pickle?
Oh yeah, only to a couple of years. Now I'm disabled. I've 3 parts blind. I can't do them anymore. But now my daughter is sending me pickled onions up what she's homemade, so I still got my vinegar.
You're still getting your supply?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that is important. I know a lot of people who've got very strong views on pickled onions, and you sound like you're one of them.
Well, if anybody tries it, they've got to try on the chips once. And on my fish and all, not just the chips. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I've learned something with your call, Audrey. It's a good one. I never thought I'd speak to someone who is opening their jar of pickled onions, by the sounds of it, homemade, and then getting a spoon and then getting some of the vinegar out of them and putting them on their chips, because that is the proper vinegar. Good call, Audrey. Good to have you on this morning, thank you. 0800 731 2000. The number. I'm Duncan, in for Jim throughout the night. You've got Mel and George answering your calls. So many calls to get to. And of course your messages on the text 81333. You must start your message with the letters UK, and you can email duncan@bbc.co.uk. I've been a little bit tardy so far this morning. I've not done any emails. I will get to your emails in the next hour, I promise. Some of your texts. Now, we're looking for people who are heading back from France, because as you will know, 4 o'clock this morning, that's kind of like the deadline. Otherwise, you come back after 4 a.m. this morning, heading back from France, you're going to have to quarantine for 14 days. 77% of Brits approve of the decision to make people do this. I'm asking you if you support it, but I'm also asking you if you've been affected by this decision. So maybe you're heading to an airport to pick someone up who's heading back from France because they managed to get a last-minute flight. I'd love to get you on the air. Maybe you're driving back from a seaport because you managed to get a boat across channel. Let's get you on the radio. This is Nick in Dorking who's texted to say we're just back from France. Was okay on the roads, but bad delays on Eurotunnel. Think most will make it back by 4 a.m. We made the call to return today, midweek, based on concerns with school start dates and possible quarantine coming in. Surprisingly easy to change Eurotunnel dates at that point. Not sure why the government couldn't have given a few days more notice. I did hear someone on a BBC radio station somewhere saying they didn't really understand why they chose 4 a.m. on a Saturday. And I've not been able to find any logic behind that particular deadline. If you have any insight, and someone said it's a little bit random, 4 a.m. on a Saturday. But if you ask someone who's heading back, or you know someone who's heading back, I'd love to make contact with you. 81333, the text number. Start your message with the letters UK. A few more texts here. This is Janet. In South Wales, we call the bits of batter scrumps. As a child, we would ask for them. I prefer ketchup with my homemade chips. As a gluten-intolerant person, my choices are limited due to my problem. I've lost half a stone during lockdown, says Janet. So these bits of batter that I thought were called scraps, and in County Durham they're not, they're just called batter. We'd learned that earlier with Sean. In South Wales, they're called scrumps. And this is Sal, who's in West Sussex. Duncan, I only discovered chip spice a few years ago. It's an American product, but I know it's Hull. But I know in Hull it's their favourite topping. I had fish and chips delivered and was asked if I wanted chip spice, so I tried it. It's a salt with tomato, paprika, onion, garlic, and most supermarkets stock it. Me, I like my chips with salad cream. Blimey, salad cream? My mum, who's no longer alive, always used to have a bottle of salad cream in the fridge. I remember that. Throughout most of my my early years, always some salad cream. 81333, that is the text number. Start your message with the letters UK. More text to come, more of your emails and more of your calls as well. 0800 731 2000 is the number. It is BBC Radio 5 Live, Radio Scotland, Radio Wales, Radio Ulster and BBC Local Radio. It's almost 2 o'clock and time for the news.
BBC News at 2 o'clock. This is Adam Porter. The government is to refund the cost to schools who unsuccessfully appeal against exam results in England after almost 40% of teachers' A-level predictions were lowered by a moderating process. One student, Halima, says she was rejected to study medicine after getting 2 Ds, a C and a B, far below her predicted 4 As. She says she won't forget the way she's been treated.
I am not just a statistic or a quota to fill. I'm a hard-working individual who will fight to receive the grades I rightfully deserve. Not only have the Conservative Party, who I deem responsible for the abject failure, they've jeopardised my future, they've ruined the potential livelihood of other hard-working students. We are the future. You need our votes, not the other way around.
British tourists who want to avoid having to go into quarantine have just 2 hours to get back to the UK from France and 5 other countries. The 14-day isolation, which also applies to the Netherlands, Malta, Monaco, Aruba and Turks and Caicos, comes into effect at 4 a.m. Ellen MacLeod flew home after less than 24 hours of her holiday in France, but says it cost her to change her flight.
I went to EasyJet, I got through to EasyJet, I got to the payment page. It was an £87 flight. The page crashed. When it reloaded, it was £237. It was triple the price. It was just, you could feel everyone in the country panicking.
Tattoo parlours, casinos and bowling alleys are reopening in England as part of the latest lockdown easing. Lifting of the restrictions was paused for 2 weeks because of a spike in coronavirus cases. The former US President Barack Obama has accused Donald Trump of attempting to undermine this November's election after he opposed plans to make it easier to vote by mail. Concerns about social distancing are expected to create additional demand for postal voting. Our North America editor John Sopel explains.
What people suspect is that Donald Trump is worried that making voting easier will lead to an increased turnout. Increased turnout will favour the Democrats. So he has said, I am going to starve funding so that postal votes become impossible. And that has led to fury. The United States Postal Service has warned there could be delays. Barack Obama said everyone depends on the United States Postal Service. They can't be collateral damage to an administration more concerned with suppressing the vote than suppressing the virus.
Parents are being urged to check their children haven't missed out on routine jabs during the lockdown. The Local Government Association, which represents councils in England and Wales, wants a national effort to ensure all young people are vaccinated. Events are being held to mark the 75th anniversary of victory over Japan Day and the end of the Second World War. Boris Johnson and Prince Charles will lead a service of remembrance. BBC News, it's 3 minutes past 2.
Across BBC Local Radio and BBC Radio 5 Live, Duncan Barks.
Hello, it's Duncan in for Jim, BBC Radio 5 Live, of course, Radio Scotland, Radio Wales, Radio Ulster, and on your BBC local radio station. I'm here throughout the night. Ton of stuff we're chewing over. 0800 731 2000. That is the number you need to be part of what's going on here. If you'd rather text, it's 81333. You need to start your message with the letters UK. And my email is Duncan, D-U-N-C-A-N, Duncan at bbc.co.uk. Bit of quarantine chat going on this morning. 77% of people in Britain approve of the decision to make travellers returning back to the UK from France and the Netherlands quarantine for 14 days. I'm keen to find out if you support this particular tactic as a way of trying to reduce COVID-19 in this country. 0800 731 2000. And if you're affected by this at all, because you're driving through the night, because you're heading back from an airport or a port, because you managed to get back into the UK ahead of the 4 a.m. deadline, let's get you on the radio. Maybe you've got a family member who's trying to get out of France at the moment. Maybe you're heading to an airport or a port to pick someone up. Whatever your connection with this, let's get you on the radio. Also talking about alcohol consumption as well, because there's a charity called Drink Aware, and then they've got concerns. They're saying that people throughout lockdown, some people, have increased their alcohol consumption. They've done this for a number of reasons, possibly anxiety, possibly boredom, and they're saying that they have concerns that people have got into the habit now of drinking a lot more, and they'll find that habit hard to kick. I'd like you to tell me whether or not throughout lockdown you've been consuming more alcohol. That's the first question. The second question is this, maybe based on your life experience, how do you reduce your alcohol consumption? How do you do it? Is it easy? Is it a case of just knocking on the head, cold turkey? 0800 731 2000. I worked for most of the lockdown period. Certainly April, May, June, I was still working on the radio every night, so I certainly wasn't drinking because I was getting in my car and going to a radio studio to broadcast. The last few weeks, I do a different kind of radio show at the weekend, and consequently, during the week, well, I'm sitting there thinking, well, yeah, might have a bottle of beer. I'm wondering if you can relate to that. Is it problematic? You find yourself thinking, yeah, drinking a little bit more, what do I do about it? So let's talk about that. We're also discussing whether or not you've recently been bowling or to a casino, because one of the things that's happening this weekend is the reopening of casinos and bowling alleys for the first time in many months. Now, I made this observation earlier, not out of spite, but last time I went to a bowling alley, I think I was a teenager. I think I went on a date. I think it might have been Alison Mitchell. When we were both 15, I quite liked Alison. And I think we went with another couple, we went bowling. And I think it was in Worthing, a great seaside resort on the south coast, because I grew up in that neck of the woods. Who's going bowling these days? I don't want to be rude, but do kids go bowling? Do teenagers still go on a date to their local bowling alley? Are they still sitting in the park on a bench having a 2-litre bottle of cider? I mean, I don't know what teenagers do. I mean, I've got a teenage daughter. She's certainly not going bowling. Who's going to the bowling alleys? And related to this, the casinos. Who goes to casinos? When did you last go to a casino? So we're looking at all of that. And on a very lighter note, chips. Only because I'm always keen to talk about food on the radio. Because I'm always hungry. And a bit of research that's come out talking about the favoured chip toppings in various parts of England. Where in Oxfordshire, ketchup is the most popular. Compared to other parts of England, Oxfordshire by far and away loves its Tommy K. 45% of people said, yeah, no chips about the tomato ketchup. Curry sauce, big in Worcestershire. Mushy peas, big in South Yorkshire. Gravy, big in Manchester. Mayonnaise in Dorset, never understood it. And chip spice in East Riding, which we're starting to shed some light on chip spice. We believe it's an American import. We think it's got garlic powder in and paprika, but we don't understand why it's big in East Riding. Maybe you can shed some light, and I'm keen on anything chip related. If you ever worked in a chippy, let's get you on the air. Where do you go for the best chips? I had some great chips in Inverness once. Possibly the best chips I've ever had. And fish and chips, I mean, they taste better by the seaside, right? Don't they? That's my theory. 0800 731 2000 for all of that. You've got George and Mel answering your calls, and we'll go to Cardiff and Nathan. Hello, Nathan. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? You okay?
Yeah, not too bad. What are you thinking this morning?
Well, I've just come back from work, a shift in the pub, actually. I run a pub in Cardiff.
Oh, yeah.
Well, with regards to chips, I like the curry sauce on the chips, to be honest.
Is that a big thing in Wales, curry sauce on chips?
Yeah, or if you're going to a kebab, it'd be cheese and beans, surely. But
hang on, cheese and beans?
Cheese and beans on chips, yeah.
You can get that from a chippy, can you?
Some of the chippies around here, yeah, I'd say so. There's Barry Island I live close to, so yeah, I'd say so.
All right, so if I went into a chippy in Barry Island, I could say to them, could you put cheese and beans on top, and they do it?
Yeah, there's a good fish and chip shop in where I live next to the airport, and they do it, so...
Yeah. Why would you... I mean, I'm just wondering, that's quite a lot of topping on your chips. I mean, that's going to remove the taste of the chips, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose it does. Depends how good the chips are, I suppose. If you know it's not going to be great.
No, it's subjective. I just find it fascinating that, I mean, that's not just a snack, that's a full-blown meal, isn't it?
Yeah, well, going back to the weight on lockdown people put on, I think I put on like a stone myself, to be honest. But
I think a lot of us have. Let's just go back a second, Nathan, because I'm interested in your pub in Cardiff. How long has it been open for since lockdown?
So we opened on the 3rd of August inside and out.
Right.
So, yeah, just over a week and a half.
And how's it been going?
Tough, to be honest. I think a lot of people have obviously thought about themselves during lockdown, looking forward to going back to the pub and have a drink with their friends, but not actually put much thought into the hospitality staff that have got to enforce these social distance rules so people feel safe, from ages, from children who come in the pub with their parents to 18, 19-year-olds who come for their Sunday lunch every single week. For me personally, I find it's very, very difficult, especially when we've lost 30, 40% of our capacity of our pub because of the 2-metre rule that still applies in Wales. So it's difficult, and I find different age groups take it very differently. I find the 20 to 35s are good. They take it straight away. They understand, they get it. And onwards and upwards, but I find, this isn't against anybody who's over the age of 65 or whatever, or age 70, but people who've been coming to pubs for decades, it's almost impossible to police them because they want to go and chat to the people they haven't done, because obviously they're let out, usually they're retired, their let out is to go to the pub and socialise with the friends they haven't seen for 4 or 5 months. And we've got to it's 2 households per table, and any more than that, you've got to be 2 meters apart, and it's so difficult.
Do you find it hard then? You mentioned your staff earlier, and people perhaps being not too considerate to the staff in the pub that you work in.
Mm-hmm.
Your staff, are they having to try to police the people who are blatantly ignoring the social distancing stuff? I mean, is there been confrontation at all?
So, yeah, a little. I don't know, example tonight, if you'd like to hear it. But
what happened?
Basically, so we had a booking of a table of 10 come in. And in Wales, it's still 2 households per table, unless you can social distance tables. And we have 2 big, long benches. So I put this table of 10 across 2 big benches, so you had all the households kind of separate, within reason, like you can only do so much. And then they were like, oh, there's actually another person coming. And I was like, okay. Turns out they were part of another person's household, which was okay, but it's still difficult. And then a regular who they all know and love with a dog, who's lovely, turns up, sits down. And I said, I'm really, really sorry. You can't sit with those guys. And he was like, well, why not? Why can't I sit there? And I was like, because they booked the table, but I can move you over another table, which was about 2.5 meters away, which for me wasn't an issue. And then straight away just swearing and saying this is ridiculous, and telling me basically that these guys said it's fine, and it's not about the people you sat with. Of course they're going to say fine, but it's about us as staff having to. I've got to put one extra member of staff on every single day while I'm taking 40% less than what I did before lockdown, just to make sure the outside area is being policed correctly. And the last thing we need is somebody kicking off at me and saying, well, is my money not good enough?
I mean, that must be really challenging. I mean, that scenario you've just outlined, what was the outcome in the end?
He said that he'll go somewhere else, and I said, okay, you're very welcome to go somewhere else. And it's, I think in the end he made himself look more like an idiot than he tried to make me look like an idiot in the nicest way possible. Just because it's quite a simple rule, and I know it's hard, and I know it's been hard for all of us. Trust me, I haven't seen my mum for a long time, and then when I finally did, it was nice, but I couldn't hug her, and I couldn't go close to her because she's already made a bubble with my sister. So it's hard for all of us. It doesn't matter if you've worked in the pub trade or selling cars like the gentleman earlier, or even yourself, you know, it's not easy for any of us, but people have to understand that it's only going to get worse if people just don't stick to the rules.
So what do you think drives that? Because you've been good enough to explain a real-life scenario in the pub that you work in earlier this evening. What drives that attitude then of almost the defiance? Is it deliberate rebellion, or is it ignorance? I mean, how would you call it?
To be honest with you, I and a lot of my staff feel like the last 4 months have just made people lose some brain cells more than put weight on. You've seen in the news, you've read it, it's been on the radio, it's been everywhere about these rules and what this virus can do to you. And I just think it's a little bit of stupidity and ignorance and arrogance to it, where they feel like they can sit down and do whatever they want and they won't get punished, especially in small pubs. Like I run a pub which at the moment can only fit 38 people sat down, and before I could do 80. So, and because they've always drank there, they feel like they can do what they want and get away with what they want. And it's not about you being a regular there for 50 years or 20 years or 2 years. It's about just helping us out as well. Because if we get COVID in our pub, we get shut down. I'll have to have 2 weeks off work, my staff will, and that means on all of us. And we were getting charged still by the pub owners, whether the company that owned the pub that I run, Joint Sale, online, £8,000 a week in overheads while we were shut down over 4 months. That's a long, long time, and the last thing we want to do is, and it's hard enough with extra staff managing that waiting until the last thing we want to do is shut down again and possibly give staff and elderly customers the COVID, which I'm 29, so I feel like I would be okay. I'm not the fittest guy in the world, but I wouldn't want somebody who's in the 70s or 80s to get it from me because someone didn't adhere to the rules on a Saturday night. And it's just not fair when everybody else, you know.
Nathan, you mentioned about your reduced capacity for obvious reasons and still trying to turn a few quid, and you don't have to answer this question, but I'm curious, given what you said, if you were to face another lockdown, and we've heard a lot about the local lockdowns that seem to be in place now if there's a spike. So you're calling us from Cardiff, you mentioned Barry Island. Let's say in that particular area there was a local lockdown and your pub had to close again. Do you think it would survive?
No, not even heartbeat. It's hard enough as it is, to be honest. I can't really go through figures with you because I was just not. I'm the manager, but I'll do have my own bosses. But to be honest, no, I don't think so. I think it's affected the trade quite heavily. Us as managers have taken a voluntary pay cut, 20%, to help this small, which was a growing business before COVID. And I've worked for the company for 12 years, you know, and taking 20% pay cut's hard enough for anybody. I just don't think. I don't think that I could take another pay cut because I've got a mortgage and a car and a life that I'd like to maintain, and my staff as well couldn't. Yeah, it's a difficult one. It is a real difficult one, and we found actually a lot of people who left the pub trade because it is long hours, it is antisocial, it is hard work. And a lot of people decided not to go back to it because they've kind of, for their first time in their life, working life, if you worked in a pub like I have since I was 15, had 4 months off. Like, I've never had 4 months off.
And it's certainly given some people time to reflect and maybe make new or different life choices. Nathan, a really good call. I'm going to move it on, but thank you for sharing that with us, because I found a lot of what you said genuinely fascinating. 0800 731 2000, our number. Julie's in Balham in London. Hello, Julie.
Hello. Yeah, it was nice to hear what that guy had to say. It brings it home, really.
Doesn't it? Yeah. Doesn't it bring it home? What for you, listening to what Nathan said? What was brought home the most?
Well, I mean, I think there is selfishness in people going away. I mean, I did hear these 2 care workers, it was quite a few months ago, and they'd gone to Spain and they saved up all year, you know, on 0 hours contract, hardly getting paid in care work, and they really needed a holiday, so they went to Spain. And this guy rang up the radio and he said, they asked me what they should do because they heard that this lockdown thing was coming in Spain. 2 weeks, you've got to isolate. And they said, you know, they were youngsters, 20-year-olds, and they said, oh, you know, they're asking him what to do because they had a 10-day holiday that they'd saved up and they were really needing because they'd witnessed a lot of deaths in their care home and everything else. And the guy just said, enjoy. But they were worried if they go back to their care home, they needed to be on duty immediately. You know, they're hardly got any money. They've got to pay the rent. You know, they're on very low income. So what do you do? You know, the government aren't going to help those sort of people. So I think if you go abroad, you've got to know that you've got to be able to afford 2 weeks, you know, at home.
Right, so people should build it into their plans that if you go abroad, there's a very good chance that you might have to come back and quarantine for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I think also, I mean, there are parts of France that aren't bad. I mean, it's Nice and Paris, but there's places in France that haven't got it as bad as we have here. But it's just like the government say the whole of France or the whole of Spain. And actually, probably the most dangerous bits are getting in the airport or on the ferry when you're too close to people, on the tube when you get back to your house. So there's a bits in between that are dangerous. And I think you know, like that guy in the pub said, you know, we need to support our local pubs, our local B&Bs, our local hotels. So go to England, and we've got a wonderful country, or UK. You know, let's try and help that lot. You know, that's what I'm doing.
You raise a really interesting point. It's not all of France. There are certain areas of France, which then leads me to ask you: do you think our government's been a bit too extreme with this? You're in France. You need to come back and quarantine. I mean, is that too excessive?
I think they've done it. I think they've done everything at the wrong time. They said they've done everything at the right time. They should have done this months ago. When people were walking through our airport, they weren't even getting temperature checked. They weren't getting tested. If we had a really good test-based system, maybe they would only be able to lock down a week or something in this country. But because we failed at the track and trace, we failed at temperature checks at airports, I think people, you know, why should we have people coming? I mean, it's the people, the selfish people who went skiing in Italy with loads of money that brought it to the rich boroughs that got it first, like Kent and Chelsea, and then the most people that die are people in Newham and Lambeth and Southwark, because they're having to drive the buses and do the Uber cabs and all that. So I think we all need to think about other people.
Some interesting points, Julie. Thank you. Let me do some of these emails because I've been quite slow tonight. I'll be honest with you. If you have email, Duncan Duncan @bbc.co.uk. Firstly, thank you. Secondly, let's do some of your emails. Now, this is someone who's listening in Canada. Talking chips, as we are, a little bit of a light relief as we head through the night. This is something I've never heard of. Duncan, here in Canada, we love our poutine. Poutine? Poutine? Chips and gravy and cheese curd. Ugh, what's that? Sounds revolting. I don't want to offend you if you're listening in Canada, but what is that? Can someone fill in the gaps? Thank you, Pam. Elsewhere, this is Matt, who's in Devon, talking about increased alcohol consumption during a lockdown. Duncan, despite having lost 10 kilograms due to better diet and more exercise, I completely relate to the drinking more over the last few months. At the very least, I've not been having to commute and drive each day, which clearly leads to a necessity not to drink too much previously. Working from home, I don't have that same need to not drink the night before because the next day I'm not driving. Fully supportive of quarantine, by no means the full answer though. And on wider matters of COVID-19, although by no means at levels like France or Spain at the moment, the UK levels above 1,000 new cases for 4 days in a row. I am surprised on the continued relaxation of regulation, such as allowing fans into the crucible for the snooker over the next couple of days. And Matt, you make some really interesting observations, and I don't think you're alone. If your life has changed during lockdown, for example, you used to get out of bed in the morning and get in your car and drive to work. If you're not doing that, you're probably more likely the night before to think, well, I'll have a few more beers than normal. And you're right about the UK levels over the last few days exceeding 1,000 new cases. I do wonder whether or not we're going to see some more local lockdowns. This one here from Dave in Cornwall. I am appalled at people going on vacations in the first place. Have they forgot we are battling a deadly virus? It's not a view that is unique. I mean, we had Sean on in the first hour saying that anyone who's overseas should not be allowed back in this country, which is quite an extreme view, some of you have said. But people have been told they can go abroad. And the question is whether or not you take the risk. This is Dave. This is about chips. I'm from Bishop's Waltham, and I worked in a fish and chip shop for 5 years, from about 2003, and is known as Scraps. Well, that's what I thought, but I was told that's not the case in County Durham. And Tony's in Wigan. Fish and chips is a great British individuality food feast at its very best. I tried many a fish supper around the UK. My local chippy has been going 51 years. Fantastic tea time food times. I can go back to the days when you would take your own dishes from home. I mixed it about over the years, and times curry over the chips and peas, gravy over the chips, ketchup, bit of mayo. But I find great fish and chips only need a bit of salt and vinegar, and more importantly, a great British cup of tea goes best with fish and chips. Superb, says Tony in Wigan. I'm interested in this idea. Is that a thing? I mean, you know, you're listening to a middle-aged bloke on the radio. I'd say middle-aged, late 40s. Did people used to take their plates to the chip shop? That is, can we explore that? I think that's great. You walk down the road with your plate under your arm. A bit like Alan Partridge with his oversized plate in his travel lodge, wherever he was staying, if you remember that episode. A few more here, then we'll take some more calls. Who's this? This is Kevin, who's in Hereford. Chips with salt and vinegar, nothing else on it. Also, I drink a bottle of cider with dinner every Sunday. Best chips around here is in a restaurant called Harold's. Thank you for that, Kevin. Cider with your dinner every Sunday. Is that like a roast, Kev? Let me know. Peter in Liverpool. We like vinegar on our chips and have had no effects of COVID-19. Enjoying your chat whilst at work, mate. Well, I'm a big fan of the city of Liverpool, having worked there for about 2.5 years. So good to know you're listening, Peter. Thank you. Now, this is someone who sent me a picture of Chip Spice in a plastic carton. Who's this from? Paul, who's in Hull, where Chip Spice is big. Here is a famous Chip Spice we love in Hull and East Yorkshire. And by the way, it's definitely called Scraps. All right, I think we can settle that those bits of batter are called Scraps. But the original American Chip Spice. Send me a picture. What is it? What is it, Paul, about this Chip Spice? And there must be a connection between this American import and your part of the UK. What is it? Why is Chip Spice big in Hull and East Yorkshire, and yet, you go 50 miles in a different direction? I'd wager most people have never heard of it. Duncan at bbc.co.uk. This is Jill in Cumbria. Hello, Jill.
Good morning.
Morning. What would you like to say?
A couple of things, actually.
Yeah.
One about the alcohol levels on the second one, chippies.
All right, well, let's do the alcohol stuff. What are you thinking?
Well, when I was furloughed, before I got furloughed, I was always a social drinker, pint here, pint there after work, with my friends, this, that and the other. I did notice that I did drink a little bit more when I was furloughed, because I was bored, and the charity actually did hit it on the head of, well, you've got nothing else to do. Like, there's only so much cooking, baking, you know what I mean? Once all your jobs are done, there's only so much you can do before you absolutely get bored. And if you're in lockdown, so you would drink a little bit more than you normally would.
Well, let's explore this for a second. So, what point did you notice that perhaps you were drinking more?
How quick my beer was going down.
Your beer?
Yeah. Because my husband is a key worker.
Yeah.
And when he was coming home from work, I want to go pop into a shop. Did he think, yeah, go grab some more beer, please, hon? Oh, yeah, I've got some of it, yeah. No, I've run out. So it's packed of, and then it kind of quickly dawned on, oops, I'm drinking a little bit too much. And then he started nagging me about it. And then, it is down to boredom. Thankfully, I was only furloughed for a few months, and I was back to work.
Yeah.
And then, so when I was back at work, obviously I had
things to do at work. I had more work-related issues to deal with, and then obviously all pubs are still closed. So I didn't really need to drink as much. And in that time, from that time I was back at work to when the pubs have opened, I've lost about 2 stone in weight.
Right.
My liver's actually gone back to normal. And even now, and I'll still go into a couple of pubs to meet my husband from work, but I will be on soft drinks or like half a pint.
Yeah. So you've kind of you noticed throughout lockdown that you were drinking more. It sounds like you kind of hit your peak, and now you're coming down the other side, and you're losing weight into the bargain as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I need to do a little bit of weight anyway, but I've just lost interest, to be honest with you. It's nothing to do with the pub, it's nothing to do with COVID, it's nothing to do with anything. It's just the fact that I've lost the interest in I still like to go out and socialise, so that, like I said, I can still go into a pub and have a soft drink, like a J2O, or drinks like that, or a lemonade or anything like that, or like a half a pint or something. But I just lost the interest of having...
And Jill, did you say you're back at work?
Yes.
Yeah, you see, I think this is part of it, isn't it? That if you're back at work, then you're out of that cycle of being at home every night and thinking, well, I've got nothing to do tomorrow, so let's crack open another can.
Exactly. So, and as for work, you wanted to hear from somebody who works in a chippy. I work in one.
You work in a chippy? Fantastic. All right, where's the chippy then?
It's in Cumbria.
Yeah.
And our delicacy in our chippy, in our area, is chips, cheese and gravy.
Oh. Now, let's just rewind for a second, because you've rather brilliantly linked a couple of things here. You talked about drinking more during lockdown, but now you're back at work. You work in the chippy. So when did the chippy reopen?
We have been open, in our town, we actually own 2 chippies. So one of them had to be closed down for furlough. But the other one, which is linked to our hotel, stayed open because we ended up doing a click and collect and a delivery service for our local area.
Yeah.
So basically worked throughout the pandemic, and we're still doing the click and collect and delivery service.
Right.
And so we've been busy.
Okay.
Really busy.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, because people want their fish and chips, even if they're on some form of lockdown. And this thing with cheese and gravy, how does that work?
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful.
Is it?
I'm not originally from Cumbria, but my husband is born and bred in the area.
Yeah.
When I first saw him come out of the chippy with this chips, cheese and gravy and a jumbo sausage, I was like, what is that concoction? That looks fancy.
Yeah.
So he gave me a little bit, ordered the chippy and ordered myself one. It's really nice. Absolutely. In fact, I've actually managed to convert quite a few people from London to chips, cheese and gravy. It's just, it's really, really...
Well, let's explore this conversion, because I get the idea of chips and gravy, which used to be a turn-off to me up until about 10 years ago. Then I spent some time in northwest England, and chips and gravy, I thought, I finally get it. And I also discovered when I was in Liverpool a thing called half and half, which I don't know if has reached Cumbria, but you'd go out for a curry in a pub and they'd say, do you want half and half with that? And I had no idea what they were talking about, Jill, until I discovered it was half chips and half rice, which I thought was one of the greatest things ever. So I kind of get the chips and gravy. I don't understand how cheese on top of your chips and gravy actually works, because that must look revolting.
It has to be the other way around. You have your chips first.
Yeah.
It's your chips first with your salt and vinegar by choice.
Yeah.
Then you have your cheese, and then your gravy goes on top, and it melts the cheese and just goes everywhere. Or another popular one is chips, cheese and curry.
Yeah, I can see that.
Also is quite popular up here, but I think this is more for we get asked this quite a fair bit from maybe I think from the Midlands. I think fish and chips with curry on top.
Yeah.
All over your fish.
You mean curry sauce, don't you? Curry sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Curry sauce. And at first I just thought, oh no, that doesn't look very nice. Absolutely beautiful. And it is called Scops, by the way.
It is called scraps, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is scraps.
I always thought it was those bits of batter were called scraps, and I'll take it from you because you work in a chip shop. Jill, cracking call, thank you. And I certainly get the sense that once you've had chips with your cheese and gravy on top, you never look back, though the idea sounds quite grim to me. But what do I know? 0800 731 2000, our number. Quick look at the forecast overnight. Scattered thunderstorms continuing across some southern parts of England and Wales. Elsewhere, largely dry, a lot of low cloud and patchy mist, and temperatures overnight falling to lows of 11 to 19 Celsius, obviously depending on where you're listening. But as a rule of thumb, if you're in the south, around 19 Celsius. If you're in the north, overnight lows of 11. My name's Duncan, in for Jim. It's BBC Radio 5 Live, Radio Scotland, Radio Wales, Radio Ulster, and BBC Local Radio. This is Dave in South Wales. Hello, Dave.
Hiya, mate. All right?
No, not bad. What are you thinking?
Jill made my point, or Julie, was it? Where she said, these people going abroad, a bit thoughtless, because they're saying they're allowing aviation to start back up again because the critical state our economy is in. Well, don't go spending your money abroad. Spend it here. No. That's the kind of first point. And the reason we're in this mess is because I think our government is always reaction after everybody else. For a small European nation, I think we're one of the highest of fatalities,
That's interesting. So you see the government strategy as being reactive as opposed to proactive?
Correct, very much so. And false information and confusing information, And everything was after the event, especially with regards to care homes. And to be honest, it's emerged now that they lied to us about the care home situation, saying everything was being checked and everything, and it was all lies. But that's not my point. My point is, people are very, very selfish. Go back to the last war. People put their lives on the line for others, and these people are going abroad now, risking bringing it back. I'm not saying they're going to, but it's putting it.
But it is a risk. I mean, how do you call it then? Because if you've let's say booked a holiday, okay, and potentially you might lose some money if you cancel it. I mean, there have been people who managed to get refunds from airlines and stuff, but potentially you could lose some money. And you look at the data that's available, and maybe you were going to go and have a week or a couple of weeks in a country that is not on the quarantine list, and you look at the numbers, and the numbers have been going down, and you think, do you know what, I'll take a calculated risk. And you go to that place. I mean, you can understand why some people would make that decision, can't you?
Oh, I can understand it, but I think it's selfish because it's our economy that we need to rebuild, not Spain's or France. Don't go spending your money over there. I can remember a company. Can you remember a company called British Leyland where we used to make our own cars?
Yeah, vaguely, yeah.
Vaguely, yeah. Well, let's be honest. Buy British was the motto then.
It was.
So we could compete with Europe and the rest of the world in that field. Well, a lot of our manufacturing is gone, and the industries that we have got are really, really struggling. So we need to invest in ourselves, not in other people. By going abroad, you're not helping this country, and you're putting the innocent and vulnerable at risk by going there.
It's interesting the points you make, Dave, about the economy and this idea of staycations in order to help boost the economy. I was talking to a friend of mine who was very much of a similar mindset to yourself and was thinking, well, you know what, let's try and go somewhere at the end of August in the United Kingdom for a week, and they tried to find an Airbnb property somewhere in the southwest, and they couldn't find one for love nor money. So I'm wondering whether or not some people are thinking, well, I'd like to stay in the UK, but it's not that practical.
I agree. That's probably a very, very true statement. I live in a seaside town called Porthcawl, which is on weekends at the moment. Police are turning people away because all the car parks are full. Now, so I do sympathise that way, but at the end of the day, a small sacrifice we're asking for 1 year, give a holiday a miss. Let us recover from this. Our country is a small country in the grand scheme of things, population-wise. We need to take care of our elderly and vulnerable. Don't put them at greater risk than they're already at. There's on about the second wave. We haven't got rid of the first one yet.
Well, that's where I think there's quite an interesting conversation, because we often hear people talking about the second wave, and I wonder whether or not that actually is a little bit misleading. And in fact, it's if you like, the first wave that just was suppressed because we went into lockdown in the middle of March. And actually, when you start easing the restrictions, are we not seeing simply things bubbling up to the surface again? Do you know what I mean?
100% you're correct, because they're trying to open up the economy, which I understand, but don't do it at the price of costing lives, because you're putting us back to where we were before. And that was a delayed reaction, the government acting too late. And now they can see that it's critical, the finances are critical. But they won't open it up for that reason. I could save this country 160 billion pounds tomorrow. Just cancel HS2, but that's not what they want to do. How that's a priority now, I'll never know when we've got this financial mess that we got. But, let's forfeit a holiday for a year and get our country growing again.
You make some interesting points, Dave. Thank you for your call. That's Dave in South Wales. This one's in the West Midlands. It's Mandy. Good morning.
Good morning. It brought back real memories when you mentioned a plate going to the fish and chip shop.
Well, someone sent me this email. I mean, I didn't even know that happened, but he was saying that you used to go down the chipping, you used to take your own plate.
As a child, I was born in 1963. I was one of 7 children, and we used to think it was fantastic if we had a sausage and batter and chips on Friday night. And I used to say to my mum, how come we can't have fish and chips? And my mum used to say, there's too many of us. It's too expensive. She said, when I was a child, I was one of 13. My mum used to give me a casserole dish, go to the chip shop for 13 faggots, 6 bags of chips, and they used to give me a free bag of batter bits to eat walking home.
Scraps?
Batter bits.
Yeah, they call it scraps.
Well, I don't know.
No, we discovered this in the last 90 minutes. It's definitely called scraps. Those bits of batter are called scraps.
My point was, my mum actually walked and took a casserole dish to the chip shop to get 13 homemade faggots in gravy and bags of chips to feed 15 of them, because my mum was one of 13 children.
Yeah, I'm hungry now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. You see, I just think it's quite delicious. There was a time, and maybe it's because I'm a little bit younger compared to some people, where you would go along with your casserole dish or your plate and they serve it up and you take it away. I think that's quite delicious.
And do you know what makes me laugh more now? I've got a 9-year-old grandson. Yeah. And if we have what we call a chippy supper, he'll say, Nanny, I am not having a sausage. That's a lunchtime meal. Can I please have fish chips and mushy peas?
Oh, it sounds like he's been brought up well. Mandy, a great call. Thank you. This is Billy on the M40. Hello, Billy.
Good morning, Duncan.
Morning.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. What would you like to say?
Yes, I'd like to talk about the thing about France, this issue with France and the changing of we'll call it the changing of the guarding rules.
Right.
I was just saying to your telephone researcher there, that at 4 o'clock the rules change.
Yes.
Have the immigrants that are jumping in the boats, the little dinghies, have they been given the write-up about the issue now with crossing the channel and getting priority, dare I say it, disembarkation in Dover? Because this is so hypocritical about what's going on. People not getting the temperatures checked, etc. in the airports. When it's all official, this all leads back to health and safety and God knows what else, and the PC rules. Well, okay, if you've got £1 in your pocket, we'll throw the rules at you. But when you jump in a dinghy, the rules we're put to one side. What's going on?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I mean,
they're taking. I don't want to sound rude on the radio, and I'm not going to swear,
No.
but they are taking the big P out of us. The big P.
Well, it's a bigger issue, isn't it, than COVID-19? It is about people who are crossing the channel under the banner of being asylum seekers or refugees, but doing it in a way that is breaking the law and entering the country illegally. I can't answer your question as to whether or not if someone rocks up in Dover, whether or not then they're spending 14 days in quarantine. But I can understand the point you're making.
My own personal opinion of it all is the Royal Navy was asked for help the other day from the government or local councils, etc.
Yeah.
You go and ask the local guy down in Dover Council how they're doing financially. They are stretched to the limit. They haven't got enough police. They haven't got enough resources. The doctors and nurses. This is the bigger picture. Is when all these people, the immigrants coming in, because there's no resources for them. We need the servicemen on the other side of the channel. Dare I say it? Patrolling the beaches like they used to in the 40s when the war was on. Nobody would get across. Now, come on, we had it sorted out in the 40s when we didn't have the resources. Let's get dare I say it, that's army.
Let me ask you, Billy, let me ask you a question. Whose responsibility do you think it is in order to stop the people crossing the channel into Dover and indeed other destinations on the coast? Is it down to, and most of these people are coming from France, that is a fact. Yeah. Is it down to the French authorities or is it down to the British authorities?
Well, as you just said, I am a truck driver.
Right.
I have previous experience working on the continent, driving a heavy goods vehicle, and I was glad to get out of it just before the borders came down across Europe, and not get stopped and say, "Who are you? Have you got any ID?" And it will get worse. And believe me, all this is down to the French. They're not interested. They never have been. Anything to do with the British, and I don't want to go back with they hate us and we hate them. They've never been interested. Anything to do with the Brits. That's why they say, we're turning a blind eye. Look what used to go on when we used to get our trucks burnt and the loads burnt because of the British lambs, etc. They've never been there for us. They never will be. The politicians can talk all they like. Our toes are going to curl up first before we get this sorted out.
Well, time will tell. And it's interesting you mentioned about the Royal Navy, because when we heard that announcement during the week, I did find myself thinking, well, if you know anything about maritime law, a Royal Navy ship in the Channel, they can't stop someone on a dinghy. Particularly if those lives are potentially at risk. Listen, Billy, drive safely. That's Billy on the M40. This is Sarah Jane in Cambridge. Good morning.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Hi, Duncan.
Hi. Now, we're going to talk about drinking during lockdown. What are you thinking?
Yeah. So I sent an email through just earlier, and then I wanted to add something else on the end of it.
Okay.
So my main point of the email was that, myself and my partner, we're both self-employed, and we found that, both our businesses were obliterated overnight in March, basically. And we found ourselves having a little bit too much Chardonnay.
No, well, if you don't mind me interrupting, what kind of business were you in?
I work in my own business as I run a cat sitting business.
Okay,
so
got you.
I look after people's cats when they're on holiday. So I have myself and a team of people that go out and pop into their houses and look after the cats for half an hour at a time, once or twice a day.
Yeah.
And so obviously that was totally affected because nobody was going away. And then I also work for my partner who we run a ballroom and Latin dance studio.
Right.
So obviously that's still not come back. My business is beginning to come back now with people going away in the UK and a few people going abroad. But the dance studio is difficult because it's, people dancing close together, lots of people in close contact, and it's still we're still trying to find out what the rules are actually in terms of how many people can you have inside that space.
Yes.
Even if they're dancing with people from the same household, we don't actually know.
it's difficult to know what the rules are. So we've actually been in contact with our local MP this evening and are waiting to hear back.
Well, I was going to ask you, where do you go to find out that kind of information, which is quite specific?
We don't know. We don't know. This evening, we've opened up the dance studio with just 4 couples dancing at a time. We've got a COVID-19 policy where they sign something saying that they accept that there can be risks and that they are dancing with one particular partner, even if it's from a different household, one particular partner, and they won't swap partners. We don't even know if that's okay, but we think for 4 couples in a fairly large studio should be okay. But now we're getting requests to increase that number now that other things are opening up. And we don't actually know. So we've contacted our local MP tonight. We've contacted the police, and they don't know. They just said speak to Parliament. So the information isn't out there. It's difficult to know.
No, I only ask because if I was in your position, I'd be thinking, blimey, who do I need to talk to actually get some clarification? But thank you for explaining the kind of work that you're involved in and your partner. So bringing it back round to the reason you called, both your businesses overnight took a massive hammering, and you found yourself thinking, well, let's open another bottle.
Exactly, yes, yeah. So that's what we were doing. And then we discovered non-alcoholic varieties of wine, which I think in the past weren't that good. I've never really tried them in the past, but you always hear say, oh, that's rubbish, it doesn't taste very nice. But actually, just having a glass of wine in your hand, even if it's non-alcoholic, it's just sometimes it can be a psychological thing. It just makes you feel good, doesn't it? End of the day.
Now that is a really interesting thing. Yeah, so you're not getting the effects of the alcohol, but it's almost like the habit side of things. It's a very good way, I think, for people that have got into a rut of having too much wine. I mean, you could do it with non-alcoholic beer, I guess, but I've never been a beer drinker. But yeah, just having a glass of wine in your hand, it's non-alcoholic. The amount of calories in it is so much less. It's about a quarter of the calories in a wine glass. So it's nothing really, much less than having a glass of Coke, which is obviously full of sugar. And so we've switched to. Can I say the name of the make? Well, I was going to ask you. Yeah, I mean, it's not. I might give too much of myself away with this comment, but it's not a world I'm particularly intimate with. Alcohol-free wine. So yeah, well, where do you get this stuff?
Yeah, well, we've discovered a make called Iceberg, but it's spelled EISSBERG. And so Iceberg, I guess it's German or Belgian or something like that. Very nice. It has Pinot, but we prefer the Chardonnay because it has a bit of a hit of Chardonnay rather than the more watery down Pinot taste. It doesn't taste exactly like alcoholic wine, obviously, but it's just nice having a glass of wine. It looks like it. It tastes semi-like it, but a bit more fruity and a bit more. And the reason I'm phoning up on top of the email that I sent is because I forgot to add in the comment that we're actually finding it really difficult to get hold of. We spotted it in our local shop, and that's where we first bought a bottle. They don't buy it in routinely. They are going to buy it in routinely for us now. But we go to our local petrol station, which has been really ranking it in with buying in loads of wine, crates of wine for people with lockdown, with pubs not being open. I'm sure they really ramped it up when their petrol sales are down with having lots more alcohol sales. But they don't sell any non-alcoholic variety, and you'd hope that a petrol station might be a little bit more savvy to having the non-alcoholic variety. So it's actually very difficult to get hold of. We bought a crate off the internet a week ago. And it's obviously so much cheaper as well than normal wine.
I have seen it in Majestic, those big wine shops that exist in many parts of the UK. I have seen a little shelf there dedicated to alcohol-free wine. Sarah Jane, great call, thank you. And I know you sent an email, I've just found it. Do forgive me if you send an email, I've got a little bit of a backlog here building up because so many emails are coming in. Thank you, Sarah Jane. Let's take another call in Liverpool, Merseyside. Roger, hello.
Hello there. I'm completely sober. I actually drink bottles of Coke with full sugar in.
Oh, yes.
I take no notice of the government at all.
Well, why not?
Because I don't know what they're talking about. I'm a licentiate of the Royal College of Physicians, and Boris Johnson is not a physician.
No, but he wants us to all get on our bicycles and lose weight, I think.
Yes, well, I believe he mentioned that doctors should have bicycles in their surgery. Well, I haven't seen any evidence of that when I went to see my doctor for a complete checkup. And he drives around in a car, the doctor,
yes.
And I got a taxi there and I walked back. And
I once had a doctor who was remarkably overweight, and when he said to me, "You could do with losing a stone," I thought it was quite hypocritical.
Well, actually, my father was an experienced general practitioner and also a forensic expert in his day in Liverpool, and he was grossly overweight, but he lived to 81, 82, and he used to smoke a pipe, not cigarettes. And I still smoke a pipe, but I don't smoke cigarettes.
Now, let's spend a few moments talking about pipe smoking, because when my dad was alive, and he died many decades ago, he was a pipe smoker, and I've still got all of his old pipes at home. You rarely see a man with a pipe these days, so where do you get your stuff from, Roger?
It's amazing how if I just sit and smoke my pipe, and little children coming past, it fascinates them. But you see, I'm a man of peace. My pipe is my best friend. I've always kept my distance from people.
Where do you get your baccy from, if I can ask?
I get it delivered now from Bath by post. I just ring them up, pay over the phone, and next day I get 2 special Virginia. It costs me a small fortune because it's all taxed.
Yeah.
And of course, my doctor's always. But you know, the one thing that stops me from smoking is having a mask on.
Yes.
And it's not possible.
No, you can't wear a mask and puff on your pipe. It's not going to work.
So what tobacco did your dad use?
Oh, I can't remember. He died when I was 9, so it's a long, long time ago. But I still have about 5 or 6 pipes that I can't bear to get rid of for obvious reasons.
Yes,
and
I have an elephant's graveyard in my kitchen of old pipes.
How many have you got then?
Oh, about a dozen.
One of the most fascinating things I did in my early days as a radio reporter, I was sent to, I think it was Ascot, the race course, and I had to cover the World Pipe Smoking Championships, which was fascinating, Roger. I don't think it happens anymore, but you had people from around the world, and they take it in turns in their little teams to see how long they could make a certain amount of tobacco last for.
Oh, well, it's an art. I spend more time packing the pipe than actually smoking it. My stepmother used to pack my father's pipe for him, and then he would then enjoy a pipe after a long grueling night at the police station, where he was examining prisoners all night. He worked 25 hours a day, my father. He was a workaholic, but he never worked so hard. When he retired, he became a taxi driver, ferrying his grandchildren around. And it was easier to work, but he enjoyed every minute of it. He threw a line, at the age of 70, he just threw a line under it and decided, none of this nonsense. You might as well, he used to pay so much tax. He used to joke that the government is going to have to take a destroyer out of the line.
I'm minded to ask people listening, and I know it's not particularly trendy or hip or possibly even wise, to find out if anyone else listening this morning is still puffing away on a pipe like yourself, Roger.
Well, I'm not actually at the moment. I'm not actually at the moment smoking it.
No, I didn't mean right now. I just meant in general.
It's psychological with me. As long as it's in my pocket, I don't smoke it.
That is interesting. Yeah.
It's psychological, and alcoholism is a psychological and also a physical dependency. It's a disease, alcoholism, and it will knock out your liver. Unfortunately, my stepmother she'd had a very rare carcinoma of the womb when she was 24 down in London, and she should have been told never to drink. Unfortunately, she used to drink sips of sherry, and it knocked her liver out. And if people realised how terrible the effects of drinking alcohol are, you vomit blood eventually, and it's not a pleasant way to go.
Have you been teetotal then for most of your life?
I never liked alcohol at all, but when I was a medical student, I used to like to drive. And then, so being a father, had I been picked up, the only person I would have met would be my father at the police station to breathalyze, to examine me. So I didn't want that to happen.
No. Listen, I've really enjoyed this conversation. A final quick question. Where in Liverpool are you?
I'm near the old airport.
The old airport? John Lennon Airport?
No, I hate that name.
Oh.
Well,
that's what it's called, isn't it?
Oh, God. As though Liverpool should be only known for... Liverpool is the first in the world in tropical medicine, first in the world in orthopedics, first in the world in public health. And if anybody mentions the Beatles to me, I will go up the wall and down back again.
Well, I don't want to drive you up the wall, but I think that's what the airport is called. A fascinating call, Roger, thank you. I'm reading a really interesting book at the moment, and close your ears, Roger, about John Lennon. Considered, I think, the definitive work by a guy called Philip Norman. If you know anything about Philip Norman, you will know he wrote pretty much the definitive book on the Beatles. Or why wouldn't you? That's Roger in Merseyside. I'm Duncan. I'm here throughout most of the night. 0800 731 2000 if you want to be part of what's going on here. Many, many things that we're chewing over. 0800 731 2000 is the number. You're listening to BBC Radio 5 Live, Radio Scotland, Radio Wales, Radio Ulster and BBC Local Radio. It's almost 3 o'clock and time for the news.
BBC News at 3 o'clock. This is Adam Porter. The government says schools in England will be able to appeal against disputed A-level and GCSE results free of charge, even if they're unsuccessful. Almost 40% of teachers' A-level predictions were lowered by a moderating process, leading to protests and calls for the system to be overhauled. Here's our education editor, Bramwyn Jeffries.
Under this year's system, schools will have to appeal on behalf of pupils. If an appeal is allowed, the money is refunded by the exam board, but not in cases that are rejected. Now, the government is promising to reimburse schools for the cost of unsuccessful appeals. The initial fee is between £10 to £25, but it can rise to as much as £150. There had been fears the cost might deter schools from taking on cases that were harder to prove.
British tourists are racing to get back to the UK before new rules come into force, which mean they have to quarantine. Travellers arriving from France and 5 other countries from 4 a.m. will be required to self-isolate for 2 weeks. Bernard Rust is on a ferry from Dieppe, which is due to dock at Newhaven at exactly 4 o'clock. He says he's done everything he can to beat the deadline.
I'm told that the ferry people know the situation and will try to get to UK at 4 a.m. The legal implications are that we have to be tied up and by the dockside. I've done my bit. I guess I'm in the hands of others now.
Casinos, theatres and bowling alleys in England are among the businesses that are reopening their doors after the lockdown, 2 weeks later than originally scheduled. Beauty salons, spas and hairdressers will also be able to offer additional services. President Trump has ordered the Chinese owner of the video-sharing app TikTok to sell its US operations within 90 days. The Trump administration has accused ByteDance of being a threat to US national security, a claim the company denies. A D-Day veteran who parachuted into Normandy at the age of 19 has died at the age of 96. John Hutton, known as Jock, recreated the jump last September on the anniversary of the Second World War landings and said he'd done it for his comrades who didn't come home.
This is part of the show because my main objective really is to pay my respects to the people on the ground who never came back, you know.
Princess Anne has been awarded military promotions to mark her 70th birthday. The Princess Royal is now a general in the British Army and an Air Chief Marshal in the RAF. The Ministry of Defence said the titles recognised her commitment to the military. The Met Office has issued new warnings of thunderstorms and heavy rain across much of England and Wales. 5 flood alerts have been issued for the West Midlands. BBC News, it's 3 minutes past 3.
Across BBC Local Radio and BBC Radio 5 Live, Duncan Barks.
Friday night into Saturday morning. How are you? My name's Duncan, in for Jim. It's BBC Radio 5 Live, Radio Scotland, Radio Wales, Radio Ulster, and of course your BBC local radio station. So many good calls so far over the last couple of hours. Thank you. We're heading through the night into the early morning, and the number you need, 0800 731 2000. A lot of stuff we're chewing over. As you heard in the news there of Adam, the big kind of like major story is 4 o'clock, 4 a.m. That's the time you need to be back in this country if you've been in France. Otherwise, 14 days quarantine. Do you support this particular tactic as a way of reducing the spread of COVID-19 in the United Kingdom? 81333 is a text number. Start your message with the letters UK. And of course, you can email duncan@bbc.co.uk. Turns out 77% of Brits approve of this decision to make travellers returning back to the UK from France and indeed the Netherlands quarantine for 14 days. Do you support this? And if you're listening at the moment and you're affected by this, because maybe someone you know is trying to head back from France, I would love to get you on the air. And maybe you, because you've been driving through the night, maybe a ferry docked in the last couple of hours somewhere and you're back in the UK.
Ну, на этом сегодня все. Завтра, я думаю, окончательно разберусь с Италией. Сейчас я пошел спать. Все, бай-бай.